Hey, good morning. This morning we're going to do something just a little bit different. And if it's your first time here, you've chosen a great day to be here because I want to peel back a little bit of the curtain this morning. I don't know if you saw The Wizard of Oz, you know what that means. I want to peel back a little bit of the curtain to kind of explain a little bit of why we do what we do and what this is. And I want to introduce you and you already have been this morning, to some fantastic people, both who have been singing and on social media all week and on the screens all week. But I want you to just know that I'm aware that you know this and all this, that this is a big church. And one of the things that's difficult in a big church is you get to know one another, get to know me. So I grew up in a church where every Sunday the pastor was at the back door and would hug everybody going out. It wasn't that big of a church. In fact, I remember the pastor would tear juicy fruit gum in half, and I'd get a half piece of gum on my way out of church, and he would hug me, and he knew me by name. Now, if we tried that here, what do you think would happen? Oh, yeah. I'm with you. I know we might have a little bit of an issue. We'd have some happy kids, but beyond that, it could be a little bit of an issue. And so I'm aware of that, and I know, wouldn't that be great if that was kind of the thing? So here's how I often get to meet people. It used to be before we had to wear masks, like for everything. I'd go to the grocery store or something, and somebody would look at me, and they'd be like, I'm not sure because I don't recognize him because he's not up there next to that table. And I would get to meet people there, and that's fine. And people ask questions and say, hey, you're part of GatheringPoint, something like that. And that's perfectly fine. I don't mind that at all. But one of the times I got asked a question, hey, we go to GatheringPoint, and I would like to know, like, what can I do to help? And I almost dropped whatever I was holding because of all the things I get asked, that's not one that I get asked a lot. So this morning, what I thought would be fun is I want to ask a question that literally no one's asking at all, which is, what can I do? What can I do to be a part of GatheringPoint? And so I've not perceived this. I know it's not your burning question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Because here's what I know. The church landscape is changing, right? Our world is changing. The way that we operate and the way that we communicate is changing. Yet Jesus is still the same, even though the church is going to look differently as we kind of move forward and move out of this. So I wanted to kind of go back a little bit and just talk for a minute about why we do what we do. Because during the pandemic, I've watched some habits kind of take place that are a little bit, they're just interesting. Like church and religion has come a little bit like a buffet, right? I've watched this where I'll just go get a little of this over here, and then I'll get a little of this on a podcast, I'll get a little of this online, I'll get a little of this over here. And it kind of creates this buffet mentality. And kind of, here's the thing, it may have worked during the pandemic, right? I mean, we just had to kind of survive, and we kind of grinded through, and we kind of got that kind of approach. And, here at GatheringPoint, we're still trying to figure out, what does church, the next iteration of church, look like, as obviously things will change and keep going back. So for those of you, it's fascinating. I talk to people who have visited. There's been people visiting us. We've had people who have come from other churches, and they want to see how things are how we're doing things here. They just want to kind of see what we're doing, and we always tell them, like, hey, we're trying to figure this out just like everybody else. And they're like, yeah, but can we see it? And we're like, yeah, you could come. You could be a part of it. And we told stories about you. They don't come ask me, hey, what book are you preaching out of this week? No, nobody asked me that. They ask about you. They ask questions like, so at the end of the services, when you have people, they write prayer requests down, they pin them to a cross? Yeah. And they're lighting candles, yeah, and they're doing communion on their end at the end of the service, yeah. People stand in line for it. No, they won't. Yeah, they do. They say, why? Here's what we're learning. We don't know, but we found that people are wanting to connect. People are wanting to connect with God at a different level, and there's some tactile things that we found. It may not work for everybody, it may not work for their church, whatever. But what it's done is that there's some things that have happened in the room that are connecting, and God is connecting with people, and we're excited about that. And so then they come, and they're blown away by like the kids volunteers and all the stuff that's going on there, and they're like, man, that's extraordinary. You creating environments. And we normally say something like, well, here's the thing. It's probably not good if a kid comes and says, man, that was so boring. Please bring me back next week. Now, no kid ever says that, right? So what we want to do is or this, when you walk in the door, yeah, man, we like the church, but nobody greeted us, and it seemed like nobody cared we were there. Well, that's a problem, right? That's a problem. And so let me continue to ask the question you're not asking. The question is, how do I get involved in that? Because here's the reality of it. We need for you to get engaged. We need for you to get engaged at some level, in some area, in some place. And I know you walk in and you're like, yeah, but it seems like all the doors are covered, and it seems like when I drop my kids off, and it seems like when I'm on the, see the band and all this, yeah, I get that. It's not as much about us as it is about you. And you've been following along all week on social media. And you've been seeing the testimonies of people who are serving in all different varieties and all different capacities. They were scrolling on the screen before. They'll be scrolling again afterwards. And what you find is there's a constant theme, is that when you're a part and when you serve, God begins to do something in you. It's the very things we were talking about with the Lord's Prayer 2 weeks ago. And about this is you're reminded that it's not my kingdom come, it's thy kingdom come, God's kingdom come. And you're reminded that when you pray, you don't pray about your kingdom first and God fix this in my kingdom and fix this marriage part and fix this, God, fix. It's God, I'm in your kingdom, and what do you want to share and shape in me? And so there's just a few things I just want to talk to about today, kind of really organized and business-like this morning. And so I would like to talk about just kind of 4 or 5 quick things that I think are just kind of important things that we just need to make sure we all are on the same page, okay? Why are we talking about this now? All right, I'm dreading saying this because I'm afraid it's going to come back and bite me, okay? So don't post this, please. It's just for us and the several hundred online. Yeah, we know you have jammies on. Right now in our state, the pandemic numbers are 2.5%. In our county, it's 4%. As of last Friday, there were 7 positive cases of COVID that were taking place. There's lawsuits all over the schools. That sounds fun. There's all kinds of things. But here's kind of what it's looking like. We may have a window, right? We may have a window of normal, right? Whatever that means. And if that's true in the next couple weeks, this is your opportunity to engage. And I get it. It's hard. So when we talk about joining a small group for 2 years, honestly, you have had the absolute best excuse in the world, hasn't it? Someone's like, hey, join a small group. Oh, I would. I don't want to die. Right? I mean, seriously. And it's been a good excuse. I didn't want you to die either. Right? I didn't want you to get sick. I didn't want you to, have to contract trace. I didn't want you to have to do all of those things. So I'm with you. I think it was great. But it seems as though, and here again, don't quote me, don't write this down, all this. It seems like now it's going to be, you're going to have to either find, another excuse, or it's going to begin to go, you know what, there has been some things that have come up over the last 2 years. There's been some nuanced things that have been a part of my life over the last 2 years that I feel like it may benefit for me to do life with other people. I talked with some teenagers and some parents a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about their kids and the impact of social media over the last 2 years, where is this app called Snapchat where you can see what other people are doing, and 2 kids will watch TV together, and then there's 10 other kids who thought they were friends and are going, well, I guess we're not friends now because I wasn't invited with the other 2 people in someone's basement to watch a game. So I'm not going to talk to them anymore because we must not be friends. And so the long-term effects and impacts of that, it can be devastating. And we can say, oh yeah, kids, teens. We can talk about that all day. The reality is though too, isn't it? You as adults, you've missed out on it too. And you've questioned some relationships, and you've seen people hanging out and be like, I guess they're okay. Well, they must be doing stuff now. I thought we were friends, but I guess not. And over time, that begins to weigh heavy on you. And so when we talk about this impacts the very thing that Jesus talked about. John wrote it down, and I think he did a great job writing it down. I think he gives a great synthesis, and we talk about this a lot because this was the commandment of Jesus, not the suggestion of Jesus, not the if you have time from Jesus, not the if you can get around to it, not the if you can get your chores and when you're done with work. This was a command from Jesus in John chapter 13, verse 34. He says, here's a new command, brand new command I give you is to love one another. Now, that's very difficult to do if it's only digital and virtual. as I have loved you, so you must love one another. Because this is the way that people are going to know that you're my disciple. It's not going to be by how well the message is today. It's not going to be by how good the band sings and plays and all that, and they're really good, and I get that, but that's not what's going to draw people to Jesus. It's not what I say, it's not what the band plays. It's by the way that you love one another. Everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. And this is why I want you to engage, because it's been extremely hard to do, and we've all paid a certain price as a result of that. Because the core tenet of Christianity is not preaching, and the core tenet of Christianity is not music. The core tenet is discipleship, meaning becoming more and more like Jesus. And we as a staff and we as a board and the leadership team, we are exploring this now more than ever about what is there beyond just being a part of a group. What are some steps and some tactile things where we can begin to think differently and act differently as a result of Jesus in our community? And not just say, oh, well, yeah, I'm a Christian, I go there, or, all this kind of stuff, but because of the way that we treat one another. Because even the pagans knew in the first century, even the pagans knew that devotion to God is about how you treat one another. And if you grew up thinking that devotion to God meant how well you treat God, or how much time, you spend with God and all that, then you kind of miss the boat. Because if you treat God really good, and you're always like, when you come into church, you're on best behavior when you come into church, but then you go home and treat your family or your coworkers or all that like garbage, then God goes, this is going to be awkward. That matters more than what you're saying to me, because those are my children that you're talking to. And so he begins to say, the way that you love, the way that you forgive, the way that you treat, that is the essence for how that. So how do we begin to grow and feel like this? Because the church, and we learned this during the pandemic, the church is not personality dependent. The church isn't building centric. It's not staff centric. It's Jesus centric. And if we're not growing in our faith for there, what we're going to do is we're going to drift. Not because we woke up and said, you know what, let's drift this year. But I would be hard-pressed for it to have, if we took a survey in here right now and said, how many of you just grew so much during the pandemic in your faith, and you just feel like, man, your life is in such great shape right now? I doubt there'd be too many hands. There'd be a couple. But I would say the vast majority would go, oh, man. And you would start with the story. Let me tell you what's going on in the last couple of years. Let me tell you. And as a result of that, we need to kind of engage, because the church isn't about this. This church is about the way that we love one another and come along one another regardless of what's taking place. And I know that, joining a group is really hard. And is it going to cost you some time? Yeah, it's going to cost you some time and energy in all of this, and I know that. But I still want you to engage anyway. The second thing I want to talk to you about is serving. Now, serving here is like blocking and tackling at your job. It's the things that you have to do right. These are mission-critical types of things. And what happens on the weekend here pertains to a lot of the things that trickle down through the week. So like parking and music and preschool and cafe and helping people take their next steps in their faith and kids ministry. All of that stuff doesn't just happen. And now, some of you have been hesitant to serve because I get this all the time. I would serve. I just don't know what I like to do. So I would go ahead and serve at a door, but I don't even know if I'm friendly. Okay, if you're not friendly, please don't serve at a door, right? Please don't. We don't want you to do something you're not good at and you're not gifted at. So if you walk around and your family's looking at, ask somebody, should I serve at a door? And they go, take their advice, right? Right? We have some really friendly, I think I can say this about our camera guys today, because they're pretty nice guys and I like working with them. But that's probably for you. Do a camera, right? Do something. There's always places for you to serve where you can be best at. There's all kinds of opportunities for you. We want you to enjoy it. I said a couple years ago, I said, hey, if you leave the church and if you you don't serve and if you don't give and if you're not in a group, we probably won't know. We probably won't know. Well, the opposite happened not too long ago. Was we had somebody who was serving in one of our environments and they were going through a hard time. And one of our staff members wrote a letter, and I heard about the letter that the staff member wrote as a letter of encouragement. And the opposite is true. When you're involved and you're serving and you're a part, we do know. And that's how a big room becomes small. It's where you get to connect with other people and you get to learn about other people and you realize that you're not alone. And it's not to say you don't have other good friends. We're not trying to trade out your friends, right? We're just trying to let you know that there's some pieces that you can be a part of. We talk a lot about giving. I'm not going to really get into that too much, but I think it's important to have a plan, like what's your plan to support the local church. And there's two kinds of giving in the world. I mean, you already know this. There's giving 1.0, which is like when the kid knocks on your door and be like, look at our uniforms, they're terrible. Would you buy beef jerky? Right, that's giving 1.0. That solves a problem. And we're not against that. You got to do that. But that's like emergency room giving. Like, we got a problem. We need to raise some money. And then there's giving 2.0, which is investing in the future. That's giving towards, so that there are fewer problems, so that we don't have to continue to do this every year. That's a different kind of giving. That's a giving where I know that there's, electricity and staffing and all that kind of stuff. That's a different one. 1.0 is easier. I mean, you put a kid and you have them cry, and you're probably going to give, right? This is how it works. 1.0 is giving. 2.0 is how the kingdom of God grows. It is. 1.0 is like a fundraiser. Giving 2.0 is giving so that there never is the need for a fundraiser because there's not a problem. We do both here. We do Be Rich, where we give towards areas and pieces in our community where we can make immediate impact. And then you're here today because a lot of people have decided to just be automatically generous with their tithe, week in and week out, month after month after month after month, which really helps support and create the programs that we're here. The other thing we want to do is something that we have not talked about in a long time just because of the nature of what we've been in, and that's inviting. Inviting. We want you to invite your friends. The fascinating thing is I had a conversation with somebody just 2 weeks ago, and they were telling me about, my friends, I got to text somebody, and I was telling them what you were doing, and I said, yeah, I'm at church. And they said back, you go to church? I never would have thought of that coming. And there are some of you in this room right now that was you. People look at you and go, I can't believe you go to church. And so what that means for you now is it's now time for you to leverage your influence and your relationships to invite other people to church. Not because you're better. You're not better than somebody just because you go to church. You're just better off than you used to be. The way that you live, the way that you manage your money, the way that you treat your family, the way that you interact is better than it used to be. And that reason is because of Jesus. And the way that you were introduced to Jesus was here. And so I always love when people say, man, I hated church as a kid. I hated it. Last time I was at church was a wedding. Last time I was at church was a funeral. And then these are your stories. When you said, and then I came one Sunday and I was like, well, that's not terrible. I'll come back next week. And some of you have been doing that for a while now, and you still have that attitude where you're like, well, it wasn't awful. I'll go again. And just so you know, we think that's great. Because while you first had your defenses up and you were the guy at work or you were the lady at work that just gave a million reasons why this was stupid and dumb and I don't know why people do that, I get all that. I understand all that. And then all of a sudden you experience something. And when you've experienced something, then you invite someone. There's a story that, same book, we're just going to stay right there. John, in the book of John, he writes that exact same story that I just told you about inviting. In the very first chapter, it's about people that were just like me and just like you. In John chapter 43, it said, the next day, Jesus decided to leave for Galilee, and he found Philip. And he looks at Philip and he says, follow me. Now, Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. So they knew each other. These were friends. They probably went to school together. They grew up together. They worked together. They were in the same one. And he was from the same city as Andrew and Peter. And Philip found Nathanael, somebody else that they knew from the past. And they said, hey, look. We found them. We found something in our world that I think Moses talked about. It's something that kind of, I don't know, but when we're there, when we're a part of it, something's different about it. And the prophets wrote about it. We think it's Jesus, and he's the son of Joseph from Nazareth. And Nathanael said to him, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Which is, can anything good come out of Bourbonnais? Can anything good come out of Kankakee County? Can anything good come out of Kankakee? Can anything good come out of Bradley? Can anything come? And he did not give him a million reasons, did not hand him a brochure, did not give him a sales pitch. It wasn't a timeshare presentation. He simply said what somebody said to you, and what somebody said to you, we want you to say to someone else, which is simply this. I don't know, why don't you just come and see? I could tell you why you should come and be a part of church. I could explain to you all those things, but I think it'd be better if you just came and you made your own determination about who Jesus is and about who are his followers and about the ways in which people talk about. And so many of you have done this. Can anything good come out of church? Can anything good come from attending a weekend service? And you said, come and see. That's awesome. Baptism, I got to tell you, next week, actually the gospel choir from Olivet, and if you've never heard them, they're really good. And Pastor Lindsay, our children's pastor, is actually an alumnus of this group, so she's really excited. Of course, she gets excited about anything, so that's great. If you haven't met her, but next week they'll be here, and we're going to do a baptism celebration. If you've never been baptized, or you're always trying to find the right time to be baptized, and it's never the right time to be baptized, go ahead, even today, you can sign up and take the opportunity to be baptized, which is literally just going public with your faith. And I've heard from many of you where you go, well, I would, but I just don't want to do that video. Ugh, that's terrifying. Okay, it is, all right, sure. But we can do this a couple different ways. One, it's your story, and you can read it. You get to read it. You don't have to memorize your story, even though I think you probably know your story. But you can write it down. The other thing, too, is you can be interviewed for it, where you can just ask questions, and that's fine. But here's why we do the video, and here's why we're like sticklers on this. Is because it's your moment when you go public with something that's happening to you privately. And it's your opportunity to share what God's been doing in your life and when you made the commitment to follow Jesus. And as a result of that, if we don't do that kind of public thing, there may be 3 or 4 people, your mom, your dad, if they're still living, your kids, maybe a coworker may hear about it. But when you do this, your story has the opportunity to literally reach thousands. Because of what Jesus has done in you can literally impact thousands of other people where they go, oh man, I resonated with that story. Well, my story's boring. Great, those are good too. You don't have to know the depths of sin to know the depths of God's grace. Those do not collide. But your story needs to be told because it's no longer your story, it's God's story. Your story is a part of God's story. And that will have an impact on someone, not just someone, some someones. And it can encourage and move them towards their next click in faith. And we don't want that. We want to be good stewards of that here. That's why do I have to do that video? I get it. Well, we'll help you make it as painless as possible. And you can talk to other people who have done it, and this is usually what we get. Oh man, I was terrified, and I thought it would be horrible. And then I did it, and I walked away and was like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Exactly. Let's continue to do that, but we want to do this. So here's what I want to do as we kind of go, and I look at this, and I know that when we talk about, serving and joining a group or baptism and all these things, many of you go, yeah, but I just like to attend, and that's really not my thing. Some of you took a break when the pandemic hit, and I fully understand and appreciate that. And you needed a break. Some of you needed a break. You'd been serving your little heart out, and you were wiped out, and you were tired. But there's been some times, and I think we're coming up on a window where I think it's going to be safer than it's been before for those who have been on the fence, okay? But I know the problem that we're facing right now is we've all gotten into a new routine. We've all gotten into new routines. And we figured out how to kind of exist with different patterns in our life and different things in our life. And here's what I don't want you to do. I just don't want this to be the church that you go to. Oh, yeah, we go there. Go there. Yeah, I go there. Yep, we got a seat. Got my seat. Got that. Yep, then what do? I leave. Yep, we have a cup of coffee. Go have lunch. I get that. I understand that. And during the pandemic, that's all we could do. I understand. No fault. No fault. But now it's time to engage. Because God wants to do some new things in you. God wants to do some new things in us, and we need you to be a part of this. It needs to not be the church you go to. It needs to be your church. It needs to transition from, I go out there to Gathering Point, to Gathering Point is my church. That's mine because I'm a part of it, and I know what's going on there. That's the story that we want to be a part of and telling and being a part of what we do. But now it's your turn, and we're on a mission, and we want to invite and we want to engage and kind of move on this. And so today at the end of the service, and Emily's going to come back in a little bit, and she's going to explain to you. At the end of the service, there'll be balloons, and there'll be color-coded opportunities and QR codes and paper and all the different ways in which you can, be a part and you can be involved in this, okay? And you can begin to look and you can begin to shop. And if you get into something and you're like, oh man, this is not what I thought that was going to be. Okay, don't make yourself miserable. Trade, move, change it. Don't keep doing something because, you feel like, oh man, now I got to do it, okay? But I think one of the hardest points that I have to explain is that people, even new staff members, will come on, and it's after about 3 months they get an idea of what all goes on here and what takes place and what's a part of this. And there's a responsibility. Because like many of you, you were not that interested in spiritual things, and now you become interested, or maybe you're beginning to become interested, and for a season, we just need you to kind of be a part and get involved in this, because there's something so phenomenal going on. And I know you've got kids to raise, and you've got jobs, and you've got problems of your own. I get all that. But your influence becomes being a part of the local church. A couple weeks ago, I got a note from a first-time attender. It was just 2 or 3 weeks ago. I remember the day really well still because we were panicking because we only had like one person at one door. It was snowing. It was only like the 37th time it had snowed. We had snow on the ground this year, and we had volunteers canceling left and right that morning, and we kind of had a quick staff huddle, and we were all just going, oh my word, this is terrible. This could not be going worse right now. It was so challenging, and we were like, do we cancel? Do we do just one service? Do we do just 2 services this day? How are we going to keep this going? And it was one of those days when you open the door, kind of like today when you open the door and you're not sure if the door's coming off because the wind's blowing so bad. And someone came for the very first time on that day. And there was one person who was at that door to greet them. And they came and they made a major life decision that day to follow Jesus. And it wasn't because of the message, and it wasn't because of the music. It was because of you. Because you were here and you served. And now this person's life has an entirely new trajectory. Their marriage has a new trajectory. The way that their kids are talked to has a new trajectory. And so I get it. You have to fight traffic here, and you got to find a spot, and it's cold, and you get a t-shirt, and you have a class, and all these things. And I know some weeks it feels like, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this, and I don't know all these things, and life's so busy. And then, I get it. I understand all the complexities. But when you get a note and it says this, I almost drove through the parking lot because I wasn't sure I would be able to get out of the car and come in, because once I drove in the lot, I realized, oh, this is serious, this is real, I'm actually going through with this. Many of you have had the same story. I don't know if I can do this. And then I walked in and someone engaged me, smiled at me, which I don't know how that happened because I should have had a mask on, but anyway. Now, and you don't have to now, it's just recommended. Not required, recommended, right? I don't even know what that means. But you showed up and you were doing the blocking and tackling, and you engaged. And someone who was terrified and disengaged in faith, engaged. And so in a minute, Emily's going to come and explain, and the band's going to sing, and it'll be a little bit different on how we do this, and I want to pray for you. But I want you to just pause for a minute. Maybe you need to trade maybe it's time for a trade, or maybe you just go, you know what, maybe today I just need to stop making this the church I go to. And I know here's the voices in your head. They're all going to say, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Okay, well, you are, right? The best way to swim is just be thrown in the lake. Let's go. Okay? No, we want to lovingly help you do that. Can I pray with you this morning? Father, today, we love you because of the way that you've loved us. And we're trying to be responsible here at Gathering Point with something that was started over 2,000 years ago called the church. And the church has played this, ethereal role in helping people create spiritual connections and impact with the world around them as a result of Jesus. And we just want to be a place where people can meet Jesus, get connected to Jesus, and then we can get out of the way. So would you help us all become not just attenders, but become disciples of Jesus so that we can live and act more like him each and every day? We love you. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today. If it was your first time, be sure to text GP Guest to 97000, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that you're the first to know about everything going on here at Gathering Point. Have a great week.